Hello. Oh, I like this cover. Okay. I feel like it's so close. Okay. Hi, friend. I just want to pin the book title. Hello. On Thursdays, I just I do How are you? What are you guys reading? What are you reading? Have you actually been reading? Because a lot of people are struggling with getting to read. Hi, hi, Claudie V. Wait, how are you? Let me see. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Are you well? Shining Light. So I'm reading Out of Darkness, Shining Light. It's a new book, so I haven't read it. So we just sampling it quick. Today I'm gonna keep it very short. I think it should be just 30 minutes, and then we'll be done. But I wanted to show you. I actually haven't done a book haul from the stuff that I got from Bargain Books, because Bargain Books is having like a crazy sale. Books are like 70 rand. Even Dr. T's book, I see Bubby's reading. I've been struggling to read consistently. I know. Be kind to yourself. Listen, we must just be kind to ourselves. So I got this at Bargain Books for $70. Yeah, that is the cover. It's gorgeous. Don't you like it when covers don't tell what the story is about? Ooh, the mystery. I'm trying to pin the title so that you can. I just want to pin it and then you can. Okay, great. So I'm gonna sample this because it's brand new. I got it with my book haul from Bargain Books. This was also in there, and this, and this, More Than Enough, by Elaine Welterroth. What? Yeah, Welterroth. Elaine Welterroth. Like, I told you guys about Elaine last week, didn't I? Yes, I did. Like, Elaine's wedding on the porch in Brooklyn, like in white. Guys, wait again. Sure. Check Elaine, okay? But yeah. So those were $70, all of them, but some stores are not selling them for 70 rand. So you have to call your local one. Just make sure that it is $70. Queenie was also 70 rand. But before you go to Bargain Books, rather call your local one and find out if they do have it for 70 rand before you drive all the way in the lockdown, mask, and all this COVID. So yes, you need it, friend. So these are some of the books that I'll be reading later on in the year. I'm not gonna, there's so much to read. Guys. This was also 70 rand. And I've been looking for this for a while. Yes. So please like look at it, bargain books on Instagram and then check what they have. I feel like my I'm sorry guys, I'm gonna do this. I feel like I didn't wipe. Much better. Yes. Okay. Look. So it shows that I'm a Petinah Gappah. I'm growing the collection, and I saw someone like hi Samuele. Samuele says, "Yay! I'm a big Petinah Gappah fan. Yay! Yeah." So this one I got at I got it from, I have the Instagram name in here. Okay, I got it from Bookshelf Sale, at Bookshelf Sale here on Instagram. So there is a pre-loved, but this is new, pre-loved store called Bookshelf Sale, and that is run by Shazia. Very quick service, beautiful service. This I got from her, and it's still brand new. Like, see, yeah. So yes, so we're collecting Petinah Gappah books. I don't know how many books does she have. An elegy. Okay, the only book that I'm missing is an elegy for Easterly. Yeah, and I do have the Book of Memory. So I've got 3 of her books now. Yeah, and I did read the Book of Memory 2 months ago or so for the for the live book readings. I'm almost done with the Secret Lives of Babasegi's Wives. Yay! Zindatu is reading because, yeah, some people are just getting it, you know, like I'm not. I'm still struggling with Bomboy. But yes, we shall keep it moving. Yeah. So I will be I'm gonna read the back and then I'll start. So this is companion in 3 volumes. Wait, there's something written here. Being a faithful account of the final years. And there's like writing here. Do you see? Yeah. Being a faithful account of the final years and earthly days of Dr. David Livingstone and his last journey from the interior to the coast of Africa, as narrated by his African companions in 3 volumes. Okay, Out of Darkness, Shining Light. An elegy for Easterly is a brilliant collection of short stories. I love short stories. I like, for me to get out of a reading funk, I actually do love getting into. Palo says, I love the cover. Yes. Stunning. I love it. I love it too. Okay, so I'm going to read the back and then we'll start. Let me just pause my music. Hi, everybody. On the long and perilous journey to bring him home, 10 of our party lost their lives. There are no stones to mark the places where they rest. Wait, I just remembered something. I'm hitting bargain books this weekend. Don't blame me when your bank balance is crying. Ne? Hey, Samuel is going as well. Hey. Now I'm done with bargain books. They called me just now and they were asking if I found my I did get my more than enough. And the store that's calling is like in the east. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. Thank you. I'm sorted. The marketing team is like proper though, like shout out. But yeah, okay. On the long and perilous journey to bring him home, 10 of our party lost their lives. There are no stones to mark the places where they rest, no epitaphs to announce their deaths. And when we who remain follow where they led, no pilgrims will come to show their children where we lie. But out of that great and troubling darkness came shining light. Our sacrifice burnished the glory of his life. This is the story of the body of Bwana Daudi, the doctor, the explorer David Livingstone, and the 69 men and women who carried his remains over 1,500 miles so that he could be borne across the sea and buried in his own country. In Petinah Gappah's radical novel, it is those in the shadows of history, those who saved a white man's bones, his dark companions, his faithful retinue on an epic funeral march, whose voices are resurrected with searing intensity. It is not only symbolic of slavery's hypocrisy, but a portrait of a world trembling on the cusp of total change and a celebration of human bravery, loyalty, and love. And so Ya Gyasi, author of Homegoing, says it's engrossing, beautiful, and deeply imaginative. So let us read. Out of darkness shining light, being a faithful account of the final years and earthly days of Dr. David Livingstone and his last journey from the interior to the coast of Africa, as narrated by his African companions in 3 volumes. Yay. So on Out of Darkness Shining Light, what was supposed to be written on there was also by Petinah Gappah, an elegy for Easterly, the Book of Memory, and then this one, Rotten Row. Maybe I'll read this next week. I'll see. Okay. I feel like if any of you have read this, please let me know in the comments. Oh, okay, no, never mind. I was gonna ask it's already answered itself. I actually like historical fiction, and I feel like it's got those vibes. Here is the prologue. The last journals of David Livingstone. I trust in Providence still to help me. I know the 4 rivers, Zambezi, Kafue, Luapula, and Lumame. Their fountains must exist in one region. I pray the good Lord of all to favor me, so as to allow me to discover the ancient fountains of Herodotus, and if there is anything in the underground excavations to confirm the precious old documents, the scriptures of truth, may he permit me to bring it to light and give me wisdom to make a proper use of it. This is how we carried out of Africa the poor broken body of Bwana Daudi, the doctor, David Livingstone, so that he could be borne across the sea and buried in his own land. For more than 1,500 miles from the interior to the western coast, we marched with his body. From Chitambo to Muanamuzungu, from Chisalamala to Kumbakumba, from Lambalamfipa to Tabora, until 285 days after we left Chitambo, we reached Bagamoyo, that place of sorrow, whose very name means to lay to rest the burden of your heart. Hello. I thought I saw a comment. We set him down in the hushed peace of the church, and all through that long night prayed and sang and keened the 700 manumitted slaves from the village of the free. After the tide came in the following day, they lined up on either side of the path that led to the door of his final crossing, and we watched until the white sail of that rickety wooden boat was a small dark triangle on the far horizon, and all that we could see of him was the sky meeting the shimmering sea. He gave up his life to the doomed, demented search for the last great secret of that heaven-descended spring, the world's longest river. He gave his all to uncover the secret that had preoccupied men of learning for more than 2,000 years, the source of the Nile. In the final 2 years of his life, both before and after he was relieved in Ujiji by the American Bwana Stanley, he was as a man possessed. In every town and village and hamlet through which we passed, Bwana Daudi asked the same question. Had any person seen or heard of a place where 4 fountains rose, 4 great fountains that rose out of the ground between 2 hills with conical tops? They were the fountains described in ancient times by a long-dead sage called Herodotus, he said, from the far-off land of Greece. To find these fountains, he believed, was to find the source of the Nile. When they asked to know what this Nile was, he said it was the world's longest river, but more than a river, it was a miracle of creation, splendid beyond comprehension. For it flows for every day of the year for more than 1,000 miles through the most arid of deserts, all without being replenished, for there are no tributaries that flow to fill it, he said. Bwana Daudi was certain that these fountains linked to 4 great rivers that he knew already, those of Kafue, Lomame, Luapula, and Zambezi. Herodotus, he said, had written that water from these fountains flowed in 2 directions, with half going up to Egypt and the other half flowing southward. And thus it was that we followed the southward flow of the Luapula into the swamps of Bangwelu. But there, instead of finding the headwaters of the Nile, in the village of Chitambo, Bwana Daudi found his death. I feel like Bwana is brother Daudi, because his name is David, right? So they calling him Daudi. But I'm just making up my own. He is as divided in death as he was in life. Sorry. He is as divided in death as he was in life. His bones lie now in his own land, entombed in the magnificence of ancient stone. In the grave we dug for him under the shade of a mvula tree. His heart and all the essential parts of him are at one with the soil of his travels. The grave of his bones proclaims that he was brought over land and sea by our faithful hands. The wise men of his age say he blazed into the darkness of our natal land to leave behind him a track of light where the white men who followed him could go in perfect safety. This is all we 69 have ever been in his world, the 69 who carried his bones, the dark companions, his dark companions, the shadowy figures in the caravans in which he moved. We were only ever the pagazi on his journeys, the porters and bearers who carried his loads and built his huts and cooked his meals and washed his clothes and made his beds, the askari who fought his battles, his loyal and faithful retinue. On the long and perilous journey to bring him home, 10 of our party lost their lives. There are no stones to mark the places where they rest. No epitaphs to announce their deaths. And when we who remain follow where they led, no pilgrims will come to show their children where we lie. But out of that great and troubling darkness came shining light. Our sacrifice burnished the glory of his life. This story has been told many times before, but always as the story of the doctor, and sometimes as appendages, as mere footnotes in his story, appear the names of Chuma and Susi. They were the first of his companions, the longest serving and the oldest, for the rest of us only joined them in the months just before Bwana Daudi's death. In some incarnations, they are two friends. In yet others, they are two brothers. Always they are Bwana Daudi's most faithful servants, just the two of them, carrying his bones, a testament to the strength of the bonds of servitude, confirming the piety of Christian faith, his piety, or piety, his sainthood, for who but a saint could inspire such service? They are sometimes called Susi and Chuma, but more often they are Chuma and Susi. Seldom do their full names appear. Never are they James Chuma, whom Bwana Daudi rescued from the bondage of slavery, and Abdullah Susi, the Mohammedan shipbuilder from Shupanga, who served a Christian master. They are remembered, if at all, as the lone bearers of Bwana Daudi's bones, as those who were there before. What if we had known then what we know now? When we bore his body out of Africa, we carried with us the maps of what the men of his world would come to call his last great discovery, the mighty river called the Lualaba. What if we had known then that our final act of loyalty to him would sow the seeds of our children's betrayal, their fate and their children's also, that the Lualaba of his drawings was the mouth of the great Congo of our downfall, the navigable river down which would come the white man, Winchester rifle aloft and Maxim gun charged. In just 11 years, the England to which we gave back its glorious son would gather at a table with others and, in the casual act of drawing lines on a map, insert borders and boundaries where there had been none, tearing nations and families asunder. Down the Lualaba they came, down the great Congo, with steamships and guns, with rubber plantations and taxes and new names for all the burial places of our ancestors. And every one of the men, women, and children that we met on our journey, every friend and foe slaver and enslaved, would, in a matter of years, be claimed as the newest subjects of Europe's kings and queen. All that was to come. But first, this is more than the story of two men, Susi and Chuma. It is also the story of the caravan leaders, Cho Pere and Uledi Munyasere of Amoda, son of Mahmud, and of Nathaniel Kumba, known as Mabruki. It is the story of the men from the NAACP mission in India, manumitted slaves, all among them Karas Farah, Fajala Christie, who, as easily as though they were slicing a fish, opened up the doctor in death, and of Jacob Wainwright, who inscribed the epitaph on the grave of his heart. It is the story of the women who traveled with us, Misozi and Ndaioka, Khadija and Laede, Binti, Sumari and Kaniki. It is the story of Halima, the doctor's cook, who scolded long and hard until we said yes, yes, we would send him back whence he came, to his home across the water. It is the story of the boy Majwara, the youngest of the companions, who found the doctor kneeling in death, and with every beat of his drum beat the life into our legs as we marched on that long and toilsome journey into the interior. It is the story of Bwana Daudi, of his final years of suffering and his relief by Bwana Stanley, and the sights that broke his spirit and wounded his heart even as he marched on unto his death. It is the story of all these and many more, the story of the doctors and our own last journey, the march to his certain death and on to Bagamoyo. That was the prologue. Sure. This is how I felt like when I read, when I sampled the Book of Memory. She writes like, I don't know. But yeah. Okay, so chapter 1 opens with How I Found Livingstone, and it is written by Henry Morton Stanley. So I am right when I say, when they say Bwana Stanley and Bwana Daudi, they're referring to brother Stanley, brother Handley, brother Stanley and brother David. And it opens like this. Before embarking on this enterprise, Dr. Livingstone had not definitely made up his mind which course he should take, as his position was truly deplorable. His servants consisted of Susi, Chuma, Hamoida, Gardner, and Halima, the female cook and wife of Hamoida. It is strange, is it not, how the things you know will happen do not ever happen the way you think they will happen when they do happen. On the morning that we found him, I was woken by a dream of cloves. The familiar, sweetly cloying smell came so sharply to my nose that I might have been back at the spice market in Zanzibar, a slim-limbed girl again, supposedly learning how to pick out the best for the Liwali's kitchen, but really standing first on one leg, then the other, and my mother saying, "But Halima, you don't listen," which was true enough because I was paying more attention to the sounds of the day, the call of the muezzin, the cries of the auctioneers at the slave market, the donkeys braying in protest, the packs of dogs snarling over the corpses of slaves outside the customs house, and the screeching laughter of children. I think of my mother often enough, but it is seldom that she comes to me in my dreams. She was the Surya of the Liwali of Zanzibar, one of her favorite slaves, although she never bore him a child to become al-Walad, and what a thing that would have been for her, to bear the Liwali's child, for he was the Sultan's representative, back in the days when Said the Great, Sayyid Said bin Sultan, that was, lived in Muscat, across the water in Oman, and not in Zanzibar. My mother says I was born before the Sultan. I see Sultan and Sultan. I'm gonna say Sultan. I was born before the Sultan moved the capital from Muscat. In those days, the Sultan had the Liwali to act for him in Zanzibar, and yes, there was the great lord of the Swahili in Zanzibar, the Mwini Mkuu, they called him, but the Sultan needed his own man, someone who was an Arab through and through, an Omani of the first rank. Though to look at the Liwali, well, you could see at once there was an African slave or two in his blood. And that's no lie. He had his 3 official wives, the Liwali did. He had his 3 horme, they called them, and also his concubines, the 10 sariri in his harem. That is plenty enough woman for any man, but it was not nearly as many concubines as Said the Great, for he had 75 wives and sariri, who gave him more than 100 children. My mother was the only dark-skinned Surya among the Liwali's sariri concubines, for they were all Circassians and Turks and whatnot, and although they said a Surya was the best kind of slave to be, and only the comely women were chosen to be sariri, for my mother, who was also a cook, being a Surya only meant that she was doubly enslaved. At night, a slave in the Liwali's harem, and in the day, a slave in his kitchen. The Liwali has been dead these many years. His house is now owned by Luda Damji, a rich Indian merchant from Bombay. They say he is more powerful than the Liwali was, for he has lent Said Bagash, the new Sultan, ever so much money. Luda Damji controls the customs house too, and takes a share of every slave sold at the slave market, and every single one that goes to Persia and Arabia, to India and up and down the whole coast of the Indian Ocean. That is wealth indeed. I was roused from my dream and all thoughts of my former life by the sound of running feet and loud voices. I could tell at once that something was wrong. Ndauka and Laide had not yet made the fires. No surprise for that, for it was between the morn and night. For all that, I could make out their forms easily enough. The moon was still bright. The watch was up, but so were others who need not have been. The porters and expedition leaders were in a flurry of movement. Even the most useless of the pagazi, like that thief Chirango, who normally needed Majwara's drum to beat some spirit into his lazy legs, moved as quickly as the others, going from one group to the next, and then from that group to the one after that. Susi ran to the boy Majwara, Asmani ran to Uledi Munyasere, Safene ran to Chopere. It was all confusion, like chickens before a rainstorm. Under the big mvula tree, the NAACP boys were conferring in a huddle. There were 7 of them, all freed men, who had been captured by slavers as boys and rescued by giant jahazi sent by the queen from the land of Bwana Daudi. Ships, they call them, dhows, that are as high as houses and almost as big as the Liwali's palace, Susi said. They had been taken in these jahazi ships to India, where they were taught to speak out of their own tongues, and instead learned all sorts of other Mzungu tongues to speak. They were also given trays to learn and books to read, and paper to write on, and clothes that made them look like Wazungu. In their midst was the tall figure of Jacob Wainwright, fully dressed even at this hour. It can rain the hail of 1,000 storms, and the sun can bake with the cruelty of Tipu Tip's slave raids, and still Jacob will wear his suit. It was given to him by the man he was named for, he says, and if you ask me, if the good man could only see how Jacob sweats in it every hour of every day, he might well have rethought his gift. I could see no sign of the other Wainwright, Jacob's brother John. Well, so there's John and Jacob Wainwright. Well, I say his brother, but Jacob himself claims that John is no brother of his, and it is no wonder that he will not claim such a brother. The man is lazier than a herd of sleeping hippos. He even lost our 2 best milking cows. You would think he had never tended a cow before. What they teach them at that school in India besides reading and talking English, I really don't know. I had an inkling of what it might be that had raised the camp at such an hour. I made my way to the mvula tree and touched the shoulder of Matthew Wellington. Is it so? I said. He nodded but did not speak. I let out a cry that startled a nearby owl into flutter. Susi detached himself from the cluster of the most senior pagazi and came toward me. I flung myself into his arms. Susi has never needed an excuse to be near me. That he has not from the first time he saw me. If there is something I understand, it is the look that a man gives a woman when he wants her. And if I had a gold nugget for every one of those looks that Susi had given me, I would be the daughter of that rich Indian Luda Damji. That I would. Just as I was letting myself go in his arms, my man Amoda came up, and Susi hastily let me go, but not before I had felt the stiffness of him. With the doctor lying just yards away, dead as anything, filthy goat. Before Amoda could remonstrate with me, Susi had pulled him to the side. My instinct was to find another woman, heading to the hut when Tawika had slept the night before. I let out a cry that split the heavens, thinking she would join me. No answer came. She had probably made a bed somewhere with that Mabruki, to whom she had so foolishly attached herself. Even in the perturbation of my spirits, I could not help remembering that just a week ago she had been saying he was no man at all, that he was nothing but a donkey, and a lazy one at that. Well, I had said to her then, you could have had your pick when Bwana Daudi told you to choose. You could have had Gardner, you could have had Chuma, but you chose to be with Mabruki. Back when we were in Unyanyembe, and she had glued herself to our party without even being invited, Bwana Daudi had said she was to choose one of his free men to be her husband. Right he was. because a good-looking thing like her dad caused us no end of trouble from being untethered. Within a week of being hired as washerwoman in Unyanyembe, she was making eyes at Amoda. There are many things you can say about that man of mine, but it is true that he has no trouble attracting women. He is almost as fine a specimen of a man as Susie, well-grown and tall. But though he does not have Susie's hearty, merry laugh that you want to hear again and again, he has a way with him that would win any woman's heart. When I first saw him back in Tabora, when I was with my Arab merchant, he fairly drove me distracted. He was all I could think of until I had him. Of course, once I had him, he soon showed himself for who he was, and I have the bruises to prove it, don't I? And I often wish that it had been Susie that I first saw instead. Oh no. And I often wish that it had been Susie that I saw first instead. But for as long as I was Halima, the daughter of Safrene, the Liwali's favorite Surya, I was not going to let Ntawika get away with simpering and smiling in my man's direction, even if that man was as hard a man to love as my Amoda. I had no problem using my fists on her. I most certainly did not. For that, I roused the anger of Bonadaudi, who said it was all my fault. But after she started to make eyes at Susie, to the great anger of his woman, Misozi, he came to see things my way. We had met Misozi in Ujiji in the weeks before Bwana Stanley found us. She was especially helpful to me then, and no wonder. She had her eye on Susie. Oh, no wonder she had her eye on Susie. Her own man had gone on a trading mission to Tabora and not come back, she said. She would rather travel with us and be Susie's roadwoman than continue to wait for her own man in Ujiji. She has a most trying nature, Misozi, with the brains of a baby goat, but it was good to have another woman about, all the same. After I made it clear to Ntawika that Amoda was not for her, she began to make eyes at Susie. When Misozi ran to complain to Bwanadaudi, it was then that he said she should pick someone else. I do not like to have such a fine-looking woman on the loose among us, I heard him say to Amoda. I would rather that she chose any of my worthies. But look at her now, tethered though she is still causing problems. She is like one of those pretty bowls in the Liwali's house, too shallow to drink tea from, but too small to eat dates from. So they sit on a high shelf where they are only good to be looked at and take up space for no reason. I like this book. The many characters, I am loving it anyway. Like, I'm following it properly. I'm having a difficult time following this reading. I don't know why. Guys, I'm actually getting it. Maybe it's because I like historical fiction. Of slaves, and they are taking the dead slaver back to his homeland. But I think I'm getting it. There are a lot of characters. There's two women, one a cook, and there's four or so men. Sure, it's a lot of characters to keep up, but I love her writing. It's I love it. I'm getting it, guys. Aren't you guys getting it? I hope you're getting it. Please listen again to this reading. Guys. Oh, get the book. It's 70 Rand. Okay. Please order the book. But that was today's reading of I'm gonna actually try and see if I can't find Petinah Gappah's let me see. I want to read in 2016 she was named African Literary Person of the Year by Brittle Paper. And in 2017 she had a DAAD Artist in Residence Fellowship in Berlin. And yeah, she was born in Zambia in Copperbelt Province. But yeah, sure, she has a law degree from University of Zimbabwe. Then in 1995 she went to Austria to do a doctorate in international trade law at the University of Graz, combined with a master's degree at the University of Cambridge. Let me see her writing career. Gappah's first book, An Elegy for Easterly, which Simule was referencing as a short story collection, a story collection that she says is about what it has meant to be a Zimbabwean in recent times, was published by Faber and Faber in 2009. So 2009, okay. It was shortlisted for the Frank O'Connor International Short Story Award, the richest prize for the short every layer of Zimbabwean culture. From the educated and the elite to the quirky, the completely mad and the children running in the street. Okay. And it's an award winner. Oh, mine too. It keeps freezing. Oh, okay. The video keeps pausing. I wonder. I'm sorry, guys. Is your connectivity bad? Sorry, guys. I'm not familiar. Okay, so that is saying I'm not familiar with the context yet and the language. Okay. I need to search to understand what they mean. Okay, yes. Same here. There are a lot of words that I read which I wasn't familiar with. This story took me back to how much I fell in love with Fred Khumalo's writing in Dancing the Death Drill. Historical fiction is like, I loved it. Yes, please sample the description to a bowl, right? Did you just said like it's not too big and not too small? What? So it just needs to just sit there. She is an amazing writer. But yeah, I think if you've read the book, I think the Book of Memory. Even I haven't read Homegoing, but I feel like it is what is in here as well. So yeah, okay, mine too keeps freezing. It took her 20 years to write this book. What? No way, Miss Vina. Ha, guys, 20 years, Lena. And like, how did it take 20 years to write a book, guys? This is how many books? How many pages? Okay, there's a glossary at the back. texts are filtered through the medium of Swahili by the narrator Halima, an uneducated and illiterate woman, and thus may occasionally represent her imperfect understanding. The Swahili terms used by Jacob Wainwright are in keeping with conventions of written Swahili in the 18th century, where it was commonly written as Swahili, while Halima uses the spellings as they sound to the ear. For instance, Bagamoyo, Swahili, Zambezi, Shenzi. Jacob uses the words as they were spelt at that time. That is Bagamoyo. Oh, Swahili, Zambezi, Shenzi. Okay. Sure. The glossary of Arabic, Swahili, and other terms and phrases is going to be very helpful. So it is 300 pages long, which also includes the glossary. Ms. Weiner says, listen to Jenny. Go back in time and read other texts besides the book that you're actually reading at hand. Ah, love it, love it, love it, love it. I hope you enjoyed it. This took so long, and I didn't even realize that it was almost 6. So we are left with about 5 minutes. I don't know if you guys want to maybe just tell me some of the historical books that you've read or that you're currently reading that you think we could read. Yeah, maybe I do have it, but yeah, that I like her covers. Like she's got amazing covers. Let me see if I can get this. Oh, Literary Alliance's reading is discussing Stay With Me for August, which I'm looking forward to. This Jane is saying font size. I don't know if you can see the font size. It's just normal. It's readable. I think this can be done in, but because of the many characters, it could take a while. But it's excited to read this. Maybe we will read this later in the year. Maybe November, October. We'll see. But yeah, these are all her covers. Let me show you. See. Jane, oh, Zendatu says, I want Stay With Me. Yes, Stay With Me is, a brilliant. I read it in 2017. And, sure, it was amazing. I think I was reading it around the same time as Abantu. Because Abantu was in December. It was... Sorry, guys. Oh, I got a call. Sorry. I got mine signed in December, yeah. So I read it around that time. And like, whew, guys, the emotions. Maybe I should actually reread it. Maybe reread a little bit of it so that I've got notes in here as well. I used to do post-its. Like this post-it notes. You guys get it. So the only reason why I was telling you guys about Stay With Me was because it was underneath this yellow one. So I'm missing an elegy. Because Ayobami was at Abantu. So thank you, Miss Vina. I will actually listen to that audio because I really, really, really wanna I wanna listen to that. Also, she is on Instagram, I think. Maybe we should check out her profile. Maybe there are other interviews that we can reference. See. Yeah, but that was today's reading of Out of Darkness, Shining Light. And the other day, or was it today? Yes, we were talking about when the penny drops in a book and you're reading a book and then you realize that this is the part where the title is explained, like in Stay With Me, when the penny drops, that stay with me is stay with me. And how did the author come about naming the book? I mean, shining out of darkness, shining light. Already, when you start it, it's already giving you the title and what to look forward to. Ugh, guys, I'm getting it. My mind is just going like, there's a lot of things going on. But now I feel like this is a book I should read before the end of the year. Normally, I'll buy a book this year, and if it's released this year, I won't read it this year. But I'm going to read it. Definitely. Yeah. And I like how every chapter begins with one of the masters writing a paragraph or something. It is rather a minute thing to mention, and it will only be understood by those who have children of their own. But the cries of the little ones in their infant sorrows what I'm gonna do tomorrow. So I'll see you tomorrow at 5 o'clock. This will be saved on IGTV, and I'll also load yesterday's live on YouTube because the internet did something last night, and then I'll load this one as well on YouTube. Okay, bye. Okay, bye. Please DM me, and for those who will watch this afterwards, send me a comment and let me know what historical fiction books you've read that stayed with you, and that you felt like they were well researched. I loved Dancing the Death Drill, by the way. Bye. Oh, thank you. I saw Palo saying my lippy looks nice. Thank you. Bye.